Hello readers. It took me a really long time to work out how to present today's book to you because it's got a lot of parts that are very different from other picture books and it's aimed at readers that are a little bit older. So I thought for a really long time about the best way to draw you into this story, and this is what I worked out.
I wanted to show you an area of my city, Sydney, that is a little bit similar to the landscape that we find in the story. To get there, I had to walk through a tunnel to find an area where there are a lot of lost things, just like in the story The Lost Thing by Shaun Tan.
I feel a little bit like the main character in the book today. I'm wearing white. I've got a backpack. I don't have crazy hair today, but sometimes I do. The author and illustrator is a man called Shaun Tan, and he is Australian. Do you think that this bird is leading us? You can hear my footsteps, it's so quiet in here. Let's follow him.
He might know where the lost things are that are inside this building, that are quite similar to the lost thing in our story. So that's why I'm following him. He's led us into this amazing building.
Today's story is set in an industrial city. That means a city where lots of things have been made and there's a lot of building and construction and creating things in factories. I'm kind of in an industrial area here in my city. You might have an industrial area in your city. Are there people in it? This is the absolutely amazing building. Let's go for a walk and explore. Let's see what lost things we can find inside. It is a picture book, but the story that the pictures are telling are one narrative, and the story that the text is telling is another narrative. You might notice that the text itself never describes the location, and it never describes the main character. So if you just read the book by itself, it could seem like it was a story from a normal suburb about a lost dog or something. But watching the pictures and the text together are really giving us a more complete story. There's a visual narrative and there's a text narrative. Things that are happening in the book are so unusual and different, but the people don't seem to be bothered by them. They hardly even seem to notice them. That might be because one of the themes in this book is apathy. That's a word that kind of means disinterested, not being involved, not really caring about what's around them. It's a bit like me standing here in front of these amazing machines and not even mentioning them. The people in the place where the book is set seem to have lost their imagination. I wonder if that's because they live in such an industrial area. All the information we need about the setting is actually in the pictures, not the text. The human main character in our story goes on lots of walks and he collects things. In this story, he is adding to his bottle top collection. I've been on a lot of walks and I always find unusual and lost things. I've found toys, I've found a chair, I've found lots of shoes, and I've even found a boat. Now, people of the world, when you're out there, stop taking your shoes and socks off. Phew, so many shoes. It's kind of like those lost things. They're discarded, thrown away. They have no purpose. a little bit like our lost thing. The lost thing is never described in the book. We only know what he looks like from the images. And he's so big, so unusual looking. How can all the characters just not even notice? This is also a place where there seems to be hardly any living things left. And all of these lost objects seem to be quite industrial, like they once had a purpose in helping make things, but they don't anymore. I thought that maybe you might not have a place like this near where you live, so that's why I thought I'd bring you with me today and have a look around here. I'm going to show you a couple of the lost objects. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the visual techniques that are used as we go through the book. You might have heard your teachers at school talk about visual literacy, which is basically just the ability to understand and read pictures and images. So I'm going to point out a few of the visual techniques that the illustrator is using to help make meaning as we go through the text. I hope you love The Lost Thing by Shaun Tan. This is the cover of our book, set in an industrial area, as you can see. I love these end papers in the book, which is before the back cover and after the front cover. The author and artist, Shaun Tan, said he was inspired by some of the engineering and maths textbooks that he found of his father's. Look at all those poor people going to their work in their industrial city. And we can see those textbooks that were inspiring the author and illustrator. It's really clever that the publishing information is hidden there in the art. Using these textbooks as the background in a lot of his art was supposed to be showing us a place that is without imagination. So, you want to hear a story? Well, I used to know a whole lot of pretty interesting ones. Some of them so funny you'd laugh yourself unconscious. Others so terrible you'd never want to repeat them. But I can't remember any of those. This all happened a few summers ago, and here we are introduced to our main human character. One rather ordinary day by the beach. Not much was going on. I was, as usual, working tirelessly on my bottle top collection, and I stopped to look up for no particular reason. That's when I first saw the thing. This is our introduction. We don't exactly know where we are. We don't even know the name of the main character. We often talk about the introduction or the orientation to a narrative, telling us who, when, where, and what. But sometimes authors leave these things mysterious. I must have stared at it for a while. I mean, it had a really weird look about it, a sad, lost sort of look. Nobody else seemed to notice it was there. Too busy doing beach stuff, I guess. Naturally, I was intrigued. You must be a curious character. I decided to investigate. Sure didn't do much. It just sat there, looking out of place. I was baffled. What a great word, baffled.
confused. He has absolutely no idea what's going on. I think if I went to the beach and saw that enormous thing sitting there amongst the people with nobody noticing it, I'd be a little bit baffled too.
This is our first hint in the story about the apathy of the people around this area, or towards the lost thing particularly. The artworks are all so dense, there's no space left at all, and the author and illustrator did this on purpose to suggest what it's like to living in one of these industrial cities. It was quite friendly though, once I started talking to it. He's giving it a wave. I played with it, the thing, for most of the afternoon. It was great fun, yet I couldn't help feeling that something wasn't quite right. Looks like they're actually kind of playing hide and seek there, which is kind of funny. As the hours slouched by, it seemed less and less likely that anybody was coming to take the thing home. There was no denying the unhappy truth of the situation. It was lost. You might notice the choice of colours that the artist has made. They're all very browns and greys, industrial colours. Apart from the lost thing, and we see our first up close of some of the people, and they're only in black and white. I asked a few people if they knew anything about it. But nobody was very helpful. I took the lost thing over to Pete's place. Pete has an opinion on just about everything. Cool, he said. He seems a bit apathetic towards it too, doesn't he? I'm trying to find out who owns it, I told him. I don't know, man, said Pete. It's pretty weird. Maybe it doesn't belong to anyone. Maybe it doesn't come from anywhere. Some things are like that. He paused for dramatic effect. Just plain lost. You might notice all the roofs are the same, all the houses are the same. The author really wants us to get that impression of a lack of imagination. The author and the illustrator are the same person in this text, so his vision is really solid. So another theme in the story is obviously being lost, being out of place. There was nothing left to do but take the thing home with me. I mean, I couldn't just leave it wandering the streets. Plus, I felt kind of sorry for it. So our nameless main character, obviously, is not apathetic. My parents didn't really notice it at first. Too busy discussing current events, I guess. That's a little bit of humour, isn't it? Because are your parents or the adults you live with often watching the news or discussing things going on in the world? So much so that they wouldn't even notice a huge red lost thing in their own lounge room? Eventually, I had to point it out to them. Its feet are filthy, shrieked Mum. It could have all kinds of strange diseases, warned Dad. Take it back to where you found it, they demanded.
both at the same time. "It's lost," I said, but they had already started talking about something else. I hid the thing in our back shed and gave it something to eat. Once I found out what it liked. That must have been quite an experiment to work out what it liked, and how funny that he's feeding it Christmas decorations. It seemed a bit happier then, even though it was still lost. I checked the local paper for any lost pet notices, but only found a lot of good deals on refrigerator repairs. I remember thinking then that Pete was probably right, that some things were just plain lost. In any case, I sure couldn't keep the thing in the shed forever. Mum or Dad would eventually notice it when they came looking for a hammer or something. It was a real dilemma. So this is kind of the complication of the story. So a dilemma, a complication, a problem, they all mean similar things. Something that has to be worked out. So in this way, the lost thing is following traditional narrative structure. This is the newspaper that the main character was looking in to try and work out what to do with him. And look at this ad. Are you finding that the order of day-to-day life is unexpectedly disrupted by unclaimed property, objects without names, troublesome artifacts of unknown origin, filing cabinet leftovers, things that just don't belong? Don't panic! We've got a pigeonhole to stick it in. The Federal Department of Odds and Ends. And look at their funny motto, sweepus underum capite, because there is an expression where we say, if we don't want to deal with the problem, we'll just sweep it under the carpet. The next morning, we caught a tram into the city. Do you have trams in your city? Look at all those workers in this industrial city or industrial suburb going to work. The illustrator has used scale, making the buildings really big and the main character and the lost thing really small. And he's used vectors, which are those lines going vertically down the page to draw our eye down to the main characters. That is a visual literacy technique. The use of the red colour in contrast to the grey around it is also highlighting where the illustrator wants our eyes to look. We arrived at a tall grey building with no windows. It was pretty dark in there and it smelt like disinfectant. "I have a lost thing," I called to the receptionist at the front desk. "Fill in these forms," she said. My goodness, that's a lot of forms, isn't it? The lost thing made a small, sad noise. So far, only the lost thing and the boy have expressed any feelings. I was looking around for a pen when I felt something tug the back of my shirt. "If you really care about that thing, you shouldn't leave it here," said a tiny voice. "This is a place for forgetting, leaving behind, smoothing over. Here, take this." So that character kind of looks like a cleaner because he's got a huge mop there. So the cleaner is showing some compassion or empathy for the lost thing. He doesn't want it to stay there. When he said, "Here, take this," it was a business card with a kind of sign on it. It wasn't very important looking, but it did seem to point somewhere. "Cheers," I said. The author said he was really interested in making a story about something that didn't come from anywhere and didn't belong anywhere and was just plain lost. So not belonging is one of the next themes of the book. At this point, we left that tall grey building. And hunted all over the place for this sign. You might notice in the middle panel, the author has used scale again, just to show how lost and out of place the lost thing is. So he's telling that story through the pictures. It wasn't an easy job. I guess in an industrial city there's lots of signs and symbols everywhere, but it's hard to find the correct one. I can't say I knew what it all meant. So the main character's a bit confused. He's a bit lost with this problem himself. We've still got the textbooks in the background, and this particular artwork is showing how much of an industrial area they really are in. Look at that machinery. And then they find the symbol that they're looking for. Eventually we found what seemed to be the right place, in a dark little gap off some anonymous little street. The sort of place you'd never know existed unless you were actually looking for it. I pressed a buzzer on the wall and this big door opened up. Well, I actually had to turn the book sideways to film this picture for you of what was inside. Every magical, most amazing lost thing that has ever been found by the look of it. I didn't know what to think, but the lost thing made an approving sort of noise. It seemed as good a time as any to say goodbye to each other. So we did. Looks like they're giving each other a high five there. Well, that's it. That's the story. Not especially profound, I know, but I never said it was. And don't ask me what the moral is. I mean, I can't say that the thing actually belonged in the place where it ended up. In fact, none of the things there really belonged. They all seemed happy enough though, so maybe that didn't matter. I don't know. The author said he wanted to tell the story from the point of view of the human character as if it was just kind of, oh, this is what I did, just a casual sort of story. And that's why he's actually used handwriting to represent that idea. I still think about that lost thing from time to time, especially when I see something out of the corner of my eye that doesn't quite fit. You know, something with a weird, sad, lost sort of look. I see that sort of thing less and less these days though. Maybe there aren't many lost things around anymore. Or maybe I've just stopped noticing them. Too busy doing other stuff, I guess.
And you can tell that the pictures on the side here are kind of telling a story along with that text. So we're zooming further and further out from those trams, and we're seeing more and more people just living their lives in this industrial city or industrial suburb and not noticing. And it's so interesting that he said, too busy doing other stuff, I guess. This is the last image in our book with no text. I think it's really interesting that although he has followed traditional narrative structure with a orientation, a complication, the resolution is sort of unfinished. It's not exactly a happy ending. It's kind of what we call ambiguous. It means we don't really know what it means. We're not really sure if the lost thing was supposed to be there, and we never find out really who this creature was. But it's such an interesting story, isn't it? So many interesting themes: apathy, belonging, empathy, friendship in a way between the characters. I hope you really liked it, and I hope you stick around and look a bit more around that industrial area I was showing you, because I'd like to tell you some more things about the book. I love the back cover because it's like it's a postcard. Greetings from suburbia. That's not really any suburb I know of. And here is a postcard. Hi Pete, how's your summer going? Mine's okay. Stuff happening and all. Finally got the plumbing in my room fixed, reclassified my bottle top collection, and completely assassinated Maxine at chess. Again. Oh yeah, and that lost thing. Remind me to tell you about it sometime. Good luck in the Applied Industrial Algebra Finals. Cheers, Shaun. Now, this is so interesting because the postcard is written to Pete, the character in the story, and it actually says from Shaun, or cheers, Shaun. Now, Shaun is the author of the book, and he said that he wanted to write the story kind of the way he would respond to it if he was a teenager. So amazing. Why do I talk so much when I present a book to you? Well, it's because I love books, first of all, but also because it helps you to understand the context in which the story is taking place. It helps you to understand the author and his intentions or his ideas. And also, sometimes it teaches you about the techniques to look for, so that when you're actually in the book, you can really understand it. Shaun Tan has written some absolutely amazing picture books. I've read one of them before. You can find that linked in the description box. But also, you might like to read some of his many books. This lost thing is one of my favourites because it kind of looks like he's peeking with one little eye out at us. I wonder where he belonged. I kind of love him. I chose this book partly because I identify with both the lost thing and the boy. So on the boy side, I like exploring, I like collecting things, I like wondering, where does that belong? What happened to that thing? What is the story behind it? And that's one of the reasons I'm here today. But I also identify with the lost thing a bit. Sometimes I feel like, where is my place? Do I belong with the people and the things around me? You might have had some of those thoughts too. Do you identify with either of the characters in the book? Do you collect things? Let's look around before we go. These ones have eyes. Enjoy. Tan.